Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, and the first thing you hear isn't thunder, but the sea. A deep, heavy sound, creeping inland like a monster that doesn't need to roar to make your body go numb. Just a few hours later, storm surge slammed into the low-lying delta of Bangladesh like a wall, erasing entire villages into the darkness. This was the Bhola Cyclone of 1971, of the deadliest disasters ever recorded. An estimated 300,000 to 500,000 people were killed, with another 50,000 to 100,000 missing, meaning some families didn't just lose loved ones, they lost any trace to ever find them. To help you grasp the scale of the horror, the death toll alone was roughly comparable to the entire population of a small country like Iceland, a few 100,000 people, as if an entire nation vanished in a single night. And the devastation didn't stop with human lives. About 7 million people were affected. Around 400,000 homes were damaged. Roughly 3,500 schools were destroyed. An estimated 9,000 ocean fishing boats and 90,000 inland boats were wiped out, nearly cutting off the lifeline of a river-based society. And about 280,000 cattle and 500,000 poultry were swept away, turning hunger into a second wave after the storm. This isn't just a story about wind and rain. This is the story of a night when the sea walked into people's homes, and by the time they understood what was happening, there was no time left to run. This is the disaster story I want to tell you, one that happened in 1970 in Bangladesh, known as the Bhola Cyclone. Imagine you live on a strip of land so low that the border between land and water can sometimes be just one step. By day, the place looks gentle, like a green carpet of rice fields stitched together by canals. By night, it turns dark and damp, and the wind carries the sharp taste of salt from the sea. People there are used to water rising, used to long rain, used to gusts slapping against thatched roofs. They get used to it so deeply that danger starts to feel normal. And that familiarity becomes the first trap. On the night of November 12th, into the early hours of November 13th, 1970, the trap snapped shut. Not with an explosion, not with lightning, but with a sound you would never forget if you've ever heard it water. At first, it resembles heavy rain pounding the roof. Then you realize it's different, deeper, heavier, like something enormous crawling across the earth. You crack the door open just a little, and the yard is already flooding. So fast that what was dry moments ago is suddenly underwater. You turn back inside. Lift your child, pull your elderly mother closer, grab a bag of belongings, shout for your family, shout for the neighbors. You hear voices answering through the wind, but the wind is changing too. It stops being random bursts. It becomes continuous, shrieking, rhythmic, like a massive machine grinding up to full speed. You tell yourself it's just a big storm. In this region, storms come often, but there's a truth few people fully understand in the Bay of Bengal. A storm doesn't need to be the strongest to become the deadliest, because the thing that kills on a massive scale isn't the wind, it's the storm surge. When cyclone winds drive into a bay shaped like a funnel, the sea is forced inward, piled higher and higher, and then hurled onto the coast like a wall. It doesn't creep in like river flooding. It rises up and crashes down. Cyclone Bhola formed over the Bay of Bengal days earlier. It grew in silence, like a whisper that keeps getting louder. By the time people truly felt it, time was already running out. The wind strengthened, the waves thickened, the sky darkened earlier, the air became heavy. But the real problem was, where do you run? If you live on a low island, where can you go if you are poor? What can you carry? And if, in the past, you've heard warnings and the storm didn't end up being as bad as predicted, a deadly thought appears. This time will be the same. We can endure it. We just need to stay inside and wait it out. Just a little longer. Just wait and see. And at the exact moment you wait and see, the sea walks into your home. At first, the water reaches the doorstep. You lift your belongings higher. You put your child on your shoulder. You move the elderly onto a table. You grab a blanket. But the water doesn't give you time to organize. It rises too fast. In some places, the surge has been described as a wall several meters high, often estimated around 6 meters, and potentially higher in extremely low areas, enough to submerge one-story homes, even two-story structures, in a short span of time. Pause and picture what that means. 6 meters is not flooding. 6 meters is a 2-story house disappearing underwater. It means standing on a bed is useless. Standing on a table is useless. You look around and realize the highest point in your home is no longer shelter. It's only a way to buy a few more minutes. The wind tears roofs away. Bamboo walls shudder and snap like matchsticks. Posts soften, twist, and rip free in an instant. Your house is no longer a house. It becomes debris. And when a house becomes debris, it becomes a weapon in that water. Everything turns lethal wooden planks, tree trunks, broken boats, sheets of metal roofing, furniture, tools, everything colliding, spinning, bashing. The water doesn't only drown, it strikes, it drags, it hurls people into each other and into hard objects as if they were dry leaves. You cling to a post, the post breaks. You cling to a tree. The tree cracks or is torn out by the roots. You cling to a boat. The boat flips. And the cruelest moment is the moment you cling to a loved one's hand, feeling their skin slip from your grasp because the current is too violent, the pull too strong, because a plank slams into you, because a wave hits like a fist. In one jerk, they vanish. You scream, but the wind devours your voice. You stare. But night and water erase all outlines. Many deaths don't happen like scenes in a film. They happen like disappearances. That night, Bhola became one of the deadliest disasters ever recorded. The death toll is often estimated between 300,000 and 500,000, largely due to storm surge and massive waves submerging low islands and coastal areas. And if you want to understand why the number is so horrifying, look at how people had to count. Some accounts describe about 200,000 people confirmed buried, with another 50,000 to 100,000 missing. What does that mean? It means after the water receded, people didn't count only bodies, they counted emptiness. A home with no one left, a road with no voices, a village that looked as if it had never existed. When morning came, the wind weakened, the rain thinned, and silence arrived. Not peaceful silence, empty silence. Survivors stepped outside and did not recognize their world. No village roads, no field borders, no fences, only mud and water stretching to the horizon. Boats tangled in tree stumps, roofs lying in the middle of fields, windows floating like dead leaves, bamboo stakes standing like bones. Familiar things sat in the wrong places, and you understood the order of life had been broken. But the cruelty is this: the disaster did not end when the storm passed. It only changed shape. It became hunger. It became disease. It became delay. It became the days when you survived the night of the cyclone, only to die slowly afterward from lack of clean water, lack of medicine, lack of food, lack of shelter. An estimated 4.7 million people were directly affected. What does that look like in real life? It means millions of people needing the same things at the same time: clean water, food, medicine, shelter. And when millions need the same things, a delay of even a few days can turn relief into a race against death. In housing, an estimated 400,000 homes were damaged. Imagine 400,000 roofs gone or unlivable. No roof means rain, wind, mosquitoes, cold, illness. It means children with nowhere dry to sleep. It means the elderly with nowhere safe to lie down. It means every piece of everyday life you tried to protect is exposed to ruin. In schools and community infrastructure, an estimated 3,500 schools were damaged. That sounds like a dry statistic, but in a disaster. Schools are not only places for learning, they are gathering points, food distribution sites, temporary shelters, places where people search for one another. When schools are shattered too, a community loses another backbone. In agriculture, crop losses were estimated around $63 million at the time. But set the word dollars aside. For poor families, crop loss means hunger. It means thinner pots of rice. It means children eating less. It means the elderly growing weaker. It means bodies that can't resist disease in the critical weeks after a catastrophe. In livestock, an estimated 280,000 cattle were lost, along with about 500,000 poultry. For many families, livestock is their biggest asset, their labor power, their living savings account. Poultry is protein, daily meals, the small resource that helps them survive hard months. When these disappear, the poorest lose their last cushion. But there is one figure that makes the disaster even more brutal, because it strikes the lifeblood of life in a river delta society: boats. An estimated 9,000 sea fishing boats were destroyed, and around 90,000 inland fishing boats were destroyed, nearly 100,000 boats gone. In a delta laced with canals, boats are not only for work, they are roads, they carry food, they carry the injured out of flooded areas. They are how communities rescue themselves before help arrives. When boats vanish, the community's ability to save itself vanishes too. And now, consider a number that is hard to bear among roughly 77,000 inland fishermen working in the affected area. An estimated 46,000 died, 46,000 people, in one occupational group. That means not only lives lost, but lives lost in the very workforce that provided food for the region. There were also estimates that about 65% of the annual fishing capacity of the coastal region was destroyed. Put simply, after the cyclone, when you needed food more than ever. The most vital food source was cut off, with a population of about 73 million at the time. A large share of animal protein in the diet came from fish. If fish supplies drop, protein drops, immunity drops, disease rises, and post-disaster deaths rise. That is the second wave of death, not as loud as the night of the surge, but wide and persistent, spreading like oil. Overall economic damage has often been estimated at about $86 million at the time. Again, set aside the word dollars. That represents roads and docks broken, grain stores flooded, homes collapsed, tools of work gone, years of savings for hundreds of thousands of families erased in hours. And there is one more truth that turned Bhola into a systemic tragedy. Not only a natural one, many people knew a storm was coming, yet almost no one took emergency action proportional to the threat. Not because they were foolish, not because they felt no fear, but because warnings lacked real power, because shelters were scarce, because poverty left few options, because transportation was limited, because repeated overwarnings in the past had bred apathy. And in disasters, apathy is the most invisible blade. It doesn't kill instantly. It only makes you hesitate for a few minutes. But in a storm surge, those minutes can be the line between life and death. Return to the moment at the start. You stand in a bamboo house. You hear the water. You lift your child. You pull your mother. You think, we can endure this. You think, just a little longer. And then the sea walks inside. The surge doesn't ask whether you're prepared. It doesn't care whether you believe it. It does one thing. It advances until everything lighter than it is carried away, and everything weaker than it is crushed. That is why Bay of Bengal was not just a storm. It was a night when water became a wall. A night when people died before they even understood what was killing them. A morning when silence was so large you could hear your heartbeat in your throat. And the days after, when the disaster kept killing through hunger, disease, lost property, and the collapse of visible and invisible infrastructure, trust, order, the feeling of safety. If you asked us what the full damage looks like, Bhola leaves a picture made of both tears and numbers, an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 dead, including accounts of about 200,000 confirmed, buried, and roughly 50,000 to 100,000 missing, about 4.7 million people affected, around 400,000 homes damaged, about 500 schools damaged, crop losses estimated around $63 million, around 280,000 cattle and 500,000 poultry lost, about 9,000 sea fishing boats and 90,000 inland fishing boats destroyed among inland fishermen, an estimated 46,000 deaths, about 65% of annual fishing capacity destroyed, and overall economic losses often estimated around $86 million at the time. And behind every one of those numbers is the same core cause on that night's storm surge, the force that turned a low, crowded coastline into a place with no time to run. But if you think these numbers are the conclusion, they aren't. Because what keeps people from looking away is not the table of statistics, it's the image behind it, a child alive, with no one left to call parents. A mother searching for her child's name in the wreckage and finding only a shirt. A man standing in the mud, staring at the place where his village used to be, unable to point to anything and say, that was my home. A community that, in a single night, shifted from the sound of markets and boats and laughter to the sound of emptiness and crying. Some disasters make people fear nature. Bhola also makes people fear their own hesitation, because sometimes what kills you is not the storm arriving, It's staying just a little longer, waiting just a little longer, thinking just a little longer. And when you finish thinking, the wall of water is already in front of you. That is why, told in the most dramatic way, the scariest line is not how strong was the storm. The scariest line is the sea entered the house before you even knew it, and when you finally knew, there was no time left to run.